welcome to Bookwood. Hi, I'm glad you chose to spend some time with me. If you haven't met before, my name is Mashou and I create bookish and journal content over here on YouTube. And in today's video, I'm going to do the final end of month update of my reading journal. I will be pasting in book covers to measure my progress on yearly challenges I set for myself. But also I will be creating a stats page on which I collect the data of my reading for that month because I just love them. This month I wanted to add in a little chat to this video because March didn't really go as usual reading months go. March was extraordinary, would maybe be the best word for it. And I wanted to have a deeper look together to my March reading stats. I picked up, and I say I picked up because I write down every book that I start, and then a DNF get marked. So this means that when I look at my total number of books at the end of the month, I will have the number of books that I picked up, but not the number of books that I finished. Well, most of the time it is the same, but then months like this, it's not always the same. So I picked up 24 different books, and that is so many for me personally. Of course, it can be different for you, but for me, 24 books is a whole lot. And I went to have a look at my compile spreadsheets of the previous years, and I have started them in 2023 when I really picked up reading again, and I started readathons and things like that. And even over all these years, this is exceptionally good. I think in 2024, I had 2 months that come close or are at least the same numbers or something. So I was like, wow, what happened? And at the start of the month, I felt really happy when I saw that I was reading my TBR like it was snow melting away. And by the end of the month, I didn't feel so good anymore about this reading because I ended up with and what shall I pick up now? I know that I'm going to have time to read. I will have to sit out an hour in the waiting room at speech therapy. So a book would be good, but well, which one? What am I going to read? And I was wondering if this big amount of flowy reading would create me a reading slump. Don't worry, it's not the case. I also thought for a second that I might have been in a reading slump without knowing the previous months, and that's maybe why I read less. But no, that's also not the case. So what happened? When we are looking at these 24 books, of which I DNF'd one, we'll come back to that, and none of them were 5 stars, but that's another discussion. The first thing I look at is the division between physical books and audiobooks. I read a total of 16 physical books, of which 4 are ebooks and 12 are books, paper books. I do split that up, even if both is eyeball reading and take the same engagement or happens at the same moments for me. I do split that up because I want to make sure I do not forget to read books from my Kindle. Those together were good for, 4,352 pages, which is a lot. I also listened to 8 audiobooks. Those were good for 54 hours and a half approximately. And what can I say? This is a lower rating or a lower listening time than before. I picked up some hours of work, which is completely normal, but it has gone up since February and January, in which it was very low. But now the bus has stopped being on strike, so Tilia is going back to school. So I do more chores now after work because, well, she took over some chores being home all the time. So I am high in page count anyways, and there is not really a reason why this is so high in there. So let's have a look at the type of book that I have been reading. I read 18 novels, which are books for me over 200 pages, and this includes audio and physical or ebooks. I read 1 short story. I did read 2 novellas. I read 1 manga, but that was a completed manga, and that was an audiobook, which was a very fun experience I need to tell you about. And 2 comics books. So we can see that out of these 16 books, at least 5 were very short ones, which brings me back to 11 physical books, which is more of a normal number for me, but still high, but normal, more normal, because these shorter books, well, they count for pages, they count for books, but then I read them pretty fast. I still don't really know why I read so much. I did something different. That is that I planned when I was going to read which book. Normally I have like my TBR, books of the library come in, they go into our library shelf, or they go onto my book wall, and you can see I've already those for April over there. And then I just mood read in between these books, and I didn't do that in March. I planned out when I was going to read a book, and maybe the pressure of I need to finish this before the weekend because that I have had, because I want to finish up a book before starting the one for TBRathon, for example. And in March, I had that twice with the Gala of Peace also. And maybe that by more planning books, the pressure of I need to get reading, I need to advance in this book because something is coming up and I would like to finish it, is less when I pick up books that I know that should be fitted in this period. And then so maybe it is helping me to not procrastinate reading. It sounds very, how do you say that? Contradictory. That the pressure of I need to finish this would make me not picking up the book. But I think that might be the case. But also what happened this month is 2 other things. One, I got a lot of days at work with very small babies, and I had more reading time due to that. My organization did step up a little bit, and I was able to spend like a day, completely a Saturday reading, which is fantastic. Didn't happen in a long while. So then I read 1 book in 1 day. I also got some insomnia, which made that I could read through the nights, which is great, but the insomnia wasn't that great. But also I read at least 2 books that are middle grade. So these reads are easier for me and I read them more quickly. Then also the 2 novellas I read, one was a child book, which was The Skull by John Clason, which holds a lot of images, and the other was Amélie Nothombr's Le Livre des Sœurs, and all Amélie Nothomb books are very airy. So this means there is a lot of white, the spacing between the lines is a little bit bigger. So I think that also played an important part of why I read more. I thought it was interesting to nuance the amount of pages I read and the amount of books I read, because well, when I watch BookTube and I see people say like, I read 40 books this month, I go like, oh, how could you read so many books? And I understand that there are people who listen to audiobooks on faster paced. I listen on 1.1. So the time I listen is almost the same as the time that it's noted on the book. That's why I use, I do not calculate the exact time. I use just the length of the book. But I never got how you could read so much. And when I started off this month, I was like, oh, well, that's how people do it. They just read. They just have the time to read. And they just seem to fly through books. And this happened and happened. And when I came at the end of my TBR, so I slided in a few books. Let me see. Because what was on my TBR? I started off with, oh yes, that's also a thing I needed to say. I started off with a Robin Hobb, which is a quick read. But my first audiobook that I picked up, which is counted in these 24, is a book that I started in February and that I had 2 hours and 16 minutes left of. So basically I listened to 7 audiobooks and a fifth of one, maybe. That's also a thing that needs to be taken into account, books that go over from month to month, even if I try not to, because I find it too difficult for my statistics. This one, Nine Dolls, was on my TBR. Je me souviens, Rebecca was on my TBR. And then I remembered I came to the end of the first week and I had time for physical reads. So I picked up the Inheritance Games, which I planned to read later, but then I had like 4 days to read it. So I was like, I'm still going through this very sleepy baby, so I can manage to pick that up, which I did. And then I even had the time to pick one other book up that was not on my TBR. And in between, I read the short story. And then I read the 2 books for TBRathon. I picked up a young adult one. And then I got a little bit in the same. I came to the end of my TBR, or books didn't came in yet from the library, and so I picked up at work a book on the Kindle, which was on the shorter side, and the comic that came in that was not on my TBR. It was on hold, and I didn't know when it was going to come. And then I picked up the Amélie Nothomb because it came in, and then we had the Gala of Peace, and I read in one day Magician of Oz, and then I picked up Léviathan by Maxime Chatham, and I did read a long time over that. I think I read a week. Let me see. Maxime Chatham, Léviathan would be book number 50. Yeah. I read 8 days over that book, which is the longest physical book this month. And which I picked up after that. So that took me almost a week. And then I was like, well, I read so much the first 2 weeks and now it is slowing so much down, which was logical because the book was much thicker and much complicated, and also at some points a little bit too long in his pages. There's an audiobook, And then I picked up the Oracle Asylum, which I came across, like I said in my vlog, quite unexpectedly in my wanting to read list, and which fitted so good for Realmathon. And I read it, and then I had an insomnia, and on one night I read, and I didn't talked about that in my vlog, I read the second book in La Folle Destinée des Kerdelec by Aurore Drécourt, which is the book that I read in January for TBRathon. So it's the second part in this duology, and well, I thought since it is French only and that the vlogs are already so long, I didn't put it in there. if you speak French, it's worth the read. It just picks up where the book one left us, and we continue the competition for the inheritance, and we still try to find out who initially messed the whole thing up. And then I finally picked up one other book, but I must say that I was like, okay, let's browse what I'm going to read, because I just got out of the, I would say not mood. I wanted things that fitted Relmaton, but then I didn't find initially in what I had, and then I didn't want too big of a book because I didn't want to carry it over into April. What finally did happen, I carried one over. So also that there is a book on this list that is going to be finished in April. It will not take that long, but that's also something that makes up these numbers, that it's not a full book. And I felt like a, how do you call that? Une fabrique. Like a place where like it was book, down, next, down, next, down, and I didn't like how that felt. So I really understand now people saying I want to read less, but then I read a lot because when I'm at work and kids are sleeping, I am like, I don't like watching TV and then other people's TV, and I don't always know how they work. So then I just pick up another book. And so that's how I read so much, and I just wanted to analyze that, because I don't want people to feel like they fail if they don't read that many books. And I also wanted to give myself and other people an insight in how come I read so many, the aspects of it that has to be taken into account. So let's dive into the rest of the stats. I will put a clip in of me setting up the page with just some music. where did those books came from? Well, I read 4 ebooks, which means that 4 books came from my Kindle, and there were all 4 included in it. 8 of the books came from my library. 2 came from Audible, and I used a credit to obtain them. 2 books are books that I own. 2 books came from, and I wrote down book boxes, but to you it's a little free libraries. 6 came from Audible and were included in my subscription. In the genre breakdown, I have, as always, fantasy, the number 1 top genre, with 9 books. I read 2 historical fictions, 2 horrors, 1 literary fiction. I started and carrying over 1 non-fiction book, 4 thrillers, 4 mysteries, and 1 contemporary book, which is a nice amount of different genres, which makes me very happy. And I am just a little bit like divided in between how to distinguish a mystery from a thriller, because often on Goodreads books are labeled with both. So please let me know in the comments down below, where do you make the difference between a mystery and a thriller? I always have a look at in which language I read. I do this because of this channel. I read 15 books in French by French authors and 4 books in French that were translated from somewhere. I read 4 books in English and 1 in English that is a translation. And then the last stat I keep track of is how many standalones I read versus how many books I read from series. And I read 13 standalones and 11 books that somehow are part of a series. I started 5 new ones and I DNF'd 2. I read 3 sequels and I also finished 3 series, which is great. And then are all the stats for this month. After that, we are diving into a very short section of me filling out my different yearly challenges. I have bought some scrolls for Aurelium. I told that in my TBR, so I did do the payments so that you can verify. I did pay for my scrolls and they are there, and I will paste them in during my Aurelium vlogs. I pasted in the 2 books for my connection challenge. I read the Robin Hood book. I read another book from my 12 to finally read list. I read 3 books laying around my house, which is great. Then I got a golden medal for a March in TBRathon, reading a book with a child protagonist, a child on the cover, and a booktube recommendation. I saw The School on the Book Castle. So I pasted in a little picture of Alice with the book. It's a print screen from her video. And then I updated my series list. I added in the books that I read. So I finished Les Murmures du Char, I finished Le Château des Animaux, I finished those, and then I added the 3 series so that I effectively started, that I'm reading for, which is La Diptyque du Temps by Maxime Chatham, which is the duology of Léviathan, and I'm still not sure if I'm going to read the second one. We'll see. The Inheritance Games that I want to read, but I'm not in a hurry, and then Au Chant des Grenouilles, which was the comic I read also for TBRathon in that vlog, and there is 4 volumes in that now, and I know for sure that I will ask them at the library for in May. I will say a goodbye to you, and I will see you very soon for Aurelium vlogs. See you soon!